The Galactic Coalition had kept peace for 3,000 years. Hundreds of species lived together across millions of worlds. They traded, they talked, and they solved their problems without war. Violence was something they had left behind long ago. But there was one species they never contacted. One species they watched from far away with careful eyes. One species they had quietly locked away on a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. Humans. The Coalition had found Earth 500 years ago. They had watched these strange creatures with growing fear. Humans were soft. They had no claws, no armor, no venom. They died easily from cold, from heat, from hunger. By all logic, they should have been a weak species. But they were not weak. The Coalition watched humans hunt animals 10 times their size. They watched humans survive wounds that would kill any other species. They watched humans fight wars against each other with terrible weapons, then rebuild their cities and start again. They watched humans refuse to die even when death was certain. And so the Coalition made a decision. They built a barrier around the Sol system. No ships could enter or leave. Humanity would stay on their little planet, growing and fighting and surviving, but they would never reach the stars. It was safer that way, for everyone. For 500 years, the plan worked. Then the came. Nobody knew where the swarm came from. They emerged from dark space like a tide of nightmares. Each was a horror of legs and claws and teeth. They moved as one mind, controlled by their queens and guided by the ancient. They did not want peace. They did not want trade. They wanted only to consume. In 3 months, they destroyed 40 worlds. Coalition fleets that had never known real battle crumbled like paper. Soldiers who had trained for ceremonies found themselves facing creatures that felt no pain, no fear, no mercy. The Coalition was dying. Ambassador watched the latest battle reports with his crystalline eyes. His body was made of living glass, beautiful and fragile. His species, though, were artists and diplomats. They had not known violence for 10,000 years. Now was watching his civilization burn. "There must be something we can do," said Admiral, a massive being with 4 arms and gray skin. He commanded what was left of the Coalition fleet. "Some weapon, some strategy." "We have tried everything," said quietly. "Our weapons are not strong enough. Our soldiers are not fierce enough. We have forgotten how to fight." "Then we will learn again." "There is no time." Turn to face the Admiral. "They will reach the core worlds in 6 months. After that, it is over." Silence filled the room. Everyone knew he was right. Then a young officer spoke. She was small, with blue skin and large dark eyes. "What about the humans?" The room went cold. "We do not speak of them," Admiral said sharply. "Why not?" the officer pressed. "They are warriors, real warriors, the records say." "The records say they are monsters," another officer interrupted. "They kill for sport, they enjoy pain, they survive," said softly. Everyone stopped talking. The ambassador walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "That is what the records truly say. Humans survive. No matter what happens to them, no matter how bad things become, they find a way to keep going." "They are dangerous," Admiral warned. "Yes," agreed. "They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. That is exactly why we need them." The debate lasted 3 days. Many Coalition members refused to even consider the idea. Humans were unpredictable. Humans were violent. Humans could not be controlled. But they kept coming. More worlds fell. More billions died. In the end, fear of extinction won over fear of humanity. Ambassador was chosen to deliver the message. He traveled alone to Earth, passing through the barrier that had kept humans trapped for 5 centuries. His ship landed in a city called Seoul, in a nation called Korea. The humans surrounded his ship with weapons, was not surprised. He stepped out with his hands raised, showing he meant no harm. "I come with a message for your world," he said, his voice translator turning his words into their language. The galaxy needs your help." Within hours stood before the United Nations. Leaders from every human nation watched him with suspicious eyes. He told them everything. The coalition, the barrier, the— "You locked us away," said one leader, her voice cold with anger. "You treated us like animals in a cage, and now you want our help." "Yes," said simply. "We were afraid of you. We were wrong to cage you. But I am not here to apologize. I am here because my people are dying, because children are being eaten alive while their parents watch, because everything good in the galaxy is being destroyed." He paused. "We did a terrible thing to your species, but the will do worse. To everyone." The humans talked among themselves for a long time, waited. Finally, an old general stood. His name was— His face was covered with scars and his eyes were tired but sharp. He had been a farmer for 10 years, but before that he had been a soldier. The other humans treated him with respect. "How many do you need?" asked. Blinked in surprise. "You will help us." "Answer the question." We thought perhaps 1,000, as many as you can spare." Laughed. It was not a happy sound. "You kept us in a prison for 500 years. You watched us struggle and fight and die, and you did nothing. Now you come begging for our help." He walked closer to. "I should hate you for what your coalition did to us." Lowered his head. "I understand. But I don't hate you," continued, "because hate is useless, and because somewhere out there children are dying." He turned to the other leaders. "I will go. Anyone who wants to join me can join me. We will show the galaxy what humans can do." Within 1 week, 500 humans volunteered. They were soldiers, doctors, engineers, and fighters. Each one had skills that made them deadly. Each one had chosen to risk their lives for a galaxy that had caged them. Was among them. She was a medic who had designed new ways to heal the human body. She was cold and quiet, but those who knew her understood that she would die before letting a patient die first. Park was the youngest volunteer. He was only 22 years old. He had been a professional gamer before the military found him. His ability to think fast and control complex systems made him perfect for drone warfare. He treated everything like a game, but his smile hid a sharp mind. As the volunteers boarded the ship that would take them to Coalition space, looked back at Earth, he did not know if he would ever see it again. "Are you afraid?" asked him. "No," said. "I stopped being afraid a long time ago." "Then why do you look so sad?" Was quiet for a moment. "Because I know what we are about to do. I know what they are asking us to become." He turned away from the window. "The galaxy wanted monsters. Let's hope they can live with what they get." The ship lifted off. 500 humans flew toward a war that had already killed billions. The galaxy had called for help, and humanity had answered. Station was the largest military base in Coalition space. It floated in orbit around a gas giant, a massive wheel of metal and light that housed 50,000 soldiers from 100 different species. It was here that the war against the was being planned. It was here that the last hope of the galaxy gathered. And it was here that the humans arrived. Admiral watched the human ship dock from his command center. Around him, officers from dozens of species stood in tense silence. Everyone had heard the stories about humans. Everyone was afraid. "They look so small," whispered an officer. Her species was covered in soft fur, and she had always believed humans were giants. "How can something so small be so dangerous?" "Size means nothing," replied. "I once saw a recording of a single human fighting off 5 armed attackers with nothing but a piece of broken glass. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds. He should have been dead, but he kept fighting until every attacker was down." The admiral shook his head. "They do not stop. That is what makes them dangerous." The airlock opened. The humans walked out. They moved differently from other species. There was no wasted motion, no nervous energy. They looked around with calm eyes, taking in everything, judging everything. Some of them smiled, but the smiles did not reach their eyes. At the front he was not the tallest or the strongest human, but something about him made everyone step back. He walked like a man who had seen death many times and was no longer impressed by it. Behind him came, carrying medical equipment that she had refused to let anyone else touch. Her face showed nothing, but her eyes moved constantly, already identifying which aliens might need her help and which might be threats. Park walked with his hands in his pockets, looking almost bored, but his eyes were the sharpest of all. He was already counting soldiers, noting weapon positions, and calculating escape routes. It was habit. He could not turn it off. Ambassador stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome to station. We are grateful that you have come." Nodded, "Show us what we are fighting." There was no small talk, no diplomatic greetings. The humans wanted to see their enemy. Led them to the briefing room. Hundreds of coalition officers were already there, watching the humans with a mix of fear and hope. A large screen showed images of the creatures were nightmares given form. They had 8 legs, each ending in a curved claw that could cut through metal. Their bodies were covered in black armor that could stop most weapons. Their heads were filled with rows of teeth, and their eyes glowed with a sickly yellow light. Acid dripped from their mouths, burning everything it touched. "This is a soldier," explained. "They feel no pain, they fear nothing. They are controlled by queens who are controlled by the. If you kill a soldier, 2 more will take its place. If you kill a queen, the soldiers in her swarm become confused for a time, but they will send another queen." The coalition officers watched the humans carefully, expecting to see fear. What they saw instead made them uncomfortable. The humans were leaning forward. Their eyes were bright. Some of them were smiling. "How fast do they move?" asked one human soldier. "Can their armor be pierced by standard rounds?" asked another. "What is the range on their acid attack? Do the queens fight or do they stay back?" The questions came fast and sharp. The humans did not care about how scary they looked. They only cared about how to kill them. Answered as best he could. When the briefing ended, stood. "I need to see them in person," he said. The room went silent. "That is not possible," said carefully. "The nearest attack is on the planet 7. It is too dangerous to." "I was not asking permission." His voice was calm but hard. "I need to see how they move, how they react. I cannot plan a war against an enemy I have only seen on screens." "Commander, I must insist." "I will go with him," interrupted. "We will observe only. We will not engage unless necessary." "And if you are killed?" Smiled. "Then you will know they are as dangerous as you say." Against all rules, against all logic, let them go. He did not know why. Perhaps it was because he saw something in his eyes that told him arguing was pointless. 2 days later and returned to station. Their armor was covered in acid burns, had a deep cut on his arm that immediately began treating. Behind them, they dragged a cargo container. "What is in there?" asked nervously. Opened the container. Inside were 17 heads. The coalition officers stared in horror. "Their armor has weak points at the joints," said casually. "Their reaction time is fast, but they rely on numbers. Separate them from the group and they become confused for about 3 seconds. That is enough time to kill them." He picked up one of the heads and examined it. "Also, they do not look up. They always attack in straight lines. Use that." "You killed 17 of them," said slowly. "The 2 of you alone." "We could have killed more," said, wincing as stitched his wound. "But we ran out of ammunition." Wylan had been hunting, had been causing her own kind of chaos. Coalition medical technology was advanced, but it was designed for species that avoided injury. Humans expected to get hurt. Human medicine was built around keeping people alive when everything was going wrong. Looked at the coalition regeneration pods and saw a dozen ways to make them better. Within 3 days, she had improved their healing speed by over 300%. Coalition doctors watched her work with a mix of amazement and fear. "How do you know how to do this?" one doctor asked. He was a being made of flowing liquid contained in a transparent suit. "Your species has only had advanced medicine for 2 centuries. "Because we needed it," replied. "Humans get hurt, a lot, we get sick. We break bones, we tear muscles. Our bodies are weak, so we learned how to fix them fast." She finished her modifications and stepped back. "Your species avoided pain. We learned to live with it." As the days passed, the Coalition began to understand something about humans that the records had never captured. Humans were not cruel. They were not evil. They were not mindless killers who enjoyed causing pain. They were survivors. Everything humans did was built around one simple idea: do not die. Their weapons were designed to kill threats quickly. Their medicine was designed to keep them fighting even when wounded. Their tactics were designed to win even when outnumbered. And underneath all of it was something else. Something that confused the Coalition even more than human violence. Humans cared about each other. Saw it when a human soldier tripped and fell during training. 3 other humans immediately stopped to help him up. He saw it when stayed awake for 30 hours to treat wounded Coalition soldiers, even though they were not her people. He saw it when personally learned the names of every human under his command, and the names of their families back on Earth. "I do not understand," admitted to one night. "You are capable of such violence, but you are also capable of such kindness. How can both exist in the same species?" Thought about the question for a long time. "The violence comes from the kindness," he finally said. "We fight because we have something to protect. We kill because we love." He looked out at the stars. A human with nothing to lose is dangerous. A human with something to lose is unstoppable. Did not fully understand, but he was beginning to. The Coalition had locked humanity away because they feared what humans could destroy. They had never stopped to consider what humans would fight to save. That mistake had cost the galaxy 500 years. Now, as the swarm grew larger and the darkness spread, the galaxy was about to learn the truth about humanity. And they were about to learn why they should have stayed in dark space. The planet 4 was beautiful. It was covered in golden fields of grain that fed 100 worlds. Gentle rivers flowed between rolling hills. Small farming villages dotted the landscape, home to the peaceful people who had never known war. Now they were coming. 80,000 of them dropped from the sky in black pods, landing across the planet like a plague of insects. They swarmed out of their pods and began killing everything they found. They screamed and ran, but there was nowhere to run. Coalition evacuation ships were 3 days away. The Planetary Defense Force, only 2,000 soldiers who had never seen real combat, was destroyed in the first hour. Then the humans arrived. 500 humans against 80,000. The Coalition commanders called it a suicide mission. They expected the humans to hold for perhaps 2 days, buying time for the evacuation ships. They sent messages of thanks and prayers for a quick death. Read these messages and deleted them. He had no intention of dying. "Listen carefully," he told his soldiers as their ship descended toward 4. "The Coalition thinks we are here to delay. They are wrong. We are here to win." He pulled up a map of the planet on his screen. They have no central command on the surface yet. Their queen is still in orbit, coordinating from her ship. Without her direct control, the soldiers rely on basic instincts. They will attack in predictable patterns. "What's the plan?" asked Sergeant Myra, a heavy weapons specialist with arms thicker than most people's legs. "We split into 3 groups. You take the drone operators and establish air superiority. I do not want a single moving without us seeing it. You set up medical stations here, here, and here. Keep them mobile. If they get close, move. Do not be heroes," pointed to the largest cluster of enemy forces. "Everyone else is with me. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we do not stop until they break." The humans landed in the middle of a nightmare. Warriors swarmed across the fields, tearing apart everything in their path. The air was filled with screams and the smell of acid. His boots hit the ground and he started killing. His rifle barked once, twice, 3 times. Each shot found the weak point at his joint. The creatures fell, twitching, their acid blood burning the soil. Around him, human soldiers spread out in perfect formation, each one covering the others. Above sat in a command shuttle, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. 200 drones filled the sky, each one equipped with sensors and weapons. Through his eyes, the battlefield became a game. Red dots were enemies. Blue dots were friends. Green dots were civilians to protect. "Contact north, 300 meters," reported calmly. 50 hostiles moving in formation, marking targets now. Saw the markers appear on his display. "You see them?" "I see them." Myra lifted her heavy gun and smiled, firing. The weapon roared. A line of fire cut through the formation like a blade through paper. Bodies flew apart. The survivors scattered in confusion, their coordination broken. "Push forward," ordered. "Do not let them regroup." The humans advanced. Step by step, meter by meter, they pushed the back. Coalition officers watching from orbit could not believe what they were seeing. 500 humans were not just holding, they were attacking. The first day ended with the humans controlling a 20-kilometer defensive line around the largest civilian population center. They had killed over 3,000. They had lost 12 of their own. Did not sleep that night. She moved between medical stations, treating wounds, performing surgery, keeping soldiers alive. A human soldier with a hole in his stomach joked with her while she stitched him back together. A coalition observer, a young, watched in horror. "How can he laugh?" she asked. "He almost died." "He is not dead," replied without looking up. "That is enough reason to laugh." The second day was harder. They adapted. They began attacking from multiple directions at once, trying to overwhelm the thin human lines. Drones burned through ammunition at terrifying rates. Human soldiers fought until their weapons overheated, then fought with knives, then fought with their fists. A young private named held a breach in the line alone for 40 minutes. When reinforcements finally reached her, she was standing on a pile of bodies, covered in acid burns, still firing her rifle. She collapsed as soon as help arrived. "Is she alive?" demanded. "Barely," reported the medic. "She should have died 10 times over." "Get her too," stepped over the bodies and took position. "And tell her she is getting promoted when she wakes up." On the third day, everything changed. A shadow fell over the battlefield. Something massive was descending from orbit. The coalition officers watching from space sent urgent warnings. A queen had come to the surface. Queens were nightmares among nightmares. They were 20 meters tall, covered in armor that could stop ship-grade weapons. Their psychic connection to their soldiers made the swarm fight as one perfect unit. Coalition doctrine was clear. When a queen appears, retreat. "Did not retreat," he said calmly. "Where exactly is she landing?" "Grid 77, but sir, our weapons cannot." "I asked where, not if." Switched to general communications. "I need 12 volunteers for a special mission. The objective is the Queen. The chance of survival is low. Anyone who does not want to come, I understand." 43 soldiers volunteered, chose 12. They moved through the chaos of battle like ghosts, slipping between patrols, using every piece of cover the terrain offered. Above them, drones created distractions, drawing enemy attention away from the small team. The Queen stood in a crater of her own making, her massive form glowing with psychic energy. Around her, thousands of soldiers waited in perfect stillness, ready to respond to her commands. "There is a neural cluster at the base of her skull," his voice came through the radio. She had stayed awake for 72 hours to research biology. Destroy that, and her connection to the swarm dies. "How do we get to it?" asked Sergeant Han, one of the volunteers. Studied the queen. Her armor was thick everywhere except there, a small gap where her head met her neck, just big enough for a bomb. "I will place the charge myself," said. "The rest of you draw her attention." "Sir, that is suicide." Maybe checked his weapons. "Let us find out." What followed was chaos. 11 humans attacked a god. They fired rockets at her legs. They threw grenades at her face. They screamed and charged and died, one by one, drawing her attention away from the single figure climbing up her back. Died first, crushed by a massive claw, then Park, then Lee. One by one the volunteers fell, buying seconds with their lives. Climbed, his hands were slippery with blood, his lungs burned. A soldier slashed at him and he felt ribs break. He kept climbing. The queen sensed him too late. She reached for him just as pushed the bomb into the gap in her armor, right against her neural cluster. "For Earth," he whispered and pressed the detonator. The explosion threw him 50 meters. He hit the ground hard enough to break bones. Through a haze of pain, he watched the queen fall. Her psychic scream tore through the air as she died. And the swarm collapsed. 80,000 went from perfect coordination to pure chaos in an instant. They stumbled, confused, their hive mind shattered. The human forces did not hesitate. "All units advance," commanded, his voice steady despite the tears running down his face. "Push them back, push them off this planet." The humans attacked. Not 500 anymore, maybe 400. Wounded, exhausted, running on nothing but will. They charged into the confused and turned the battle into a slaughter. By sunset, 4 was free. Woke in a medical pod 3 days later. Was standing over him, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "How many?" he asked. "We lost 108, she said softly. "But we saved 4 million civilians, and we killed over 30,000. Closed his eyes. 108 humans, each one a life. Each one someone's child, someone's friend, someone's love. But they had won. For the first time in the war, they had been beaten. Not delayed, not slowed, beaten. Across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. The humans had done the impossible. 500 had stood against 80,000, and they had won. The coalition watched in stunned silence. Though for the first time in their existence, knew fear. And on a damaged planet covered in golden fields and corpses, 400 humans gathered to bury their dead and prepare for the next battle. The war was just beginning. The news of 4 spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In every station, on every world, beings of 100 different species watched recordings of the battle. They saw 500 humans charge into 80,000 nightmares and win. They saw a man climb a living god and kill it with his bare hands. They saw soldiers fight with broken bones and burning skin, never stopping, never surrendering. For the first time in months, the coalition felt hope. But hope was complicated. On station, the coalition council met in emergency session. The debate was fierce, and the voices were many. "The humans have proven themselves," said Ambassador, his crystalline body glowing with emotion. "They saved 4 when we could not. They deserve our full support." "Support?" Admiral leaned forward, his 4 arms crossed. "You want to give them ships, weapons, access to our technology?" He shook his massive head. "Did you not see what they did? They killed 30,000 with 500 soldiers. Is that not what we wanted? What I want is to survive this war. What I fear is what happens after." Pulled up a display. "I have run the calculations. If we give humans our shipbuilding technology, they could build a fleet that rivals ours within 50 years. If we give them our weapons, they could develop ones that surpass them within 20. We spent 500 years containing this species. Now we are considering setting them free." "They are already free," replied. "The barrier is down. We cannot put them back in their cage even if we wanted to." "Then perhaps we should find another solution." The words hung in the air like poison. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded slowly. Felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "I am suggesting nothing," stood and walked to the window. "But others will. When this war is over, if we win, there will be voices calling for action against humanity. Some will want them eliminated. Others will want them controlled. We must be prepared for these discussions." "And what do you believe?" Was quiet for a long moment. "I believe we created this problem 500 years ago. I believe we were afraid of what we did not understand. And I believe that if we betray the humans after they save us, we will deserve whatever comes next." The debate continued for hours. In the end, the council agreed to provide limited support, supplies, medical equipment, intelligence, but no ships, no advanced weapons, no technology that could be turned against the coalition later. It was a compromise that satisfied no one. Park heard about the council's decision through channels that were supposed to be secure. He had been monitoring coalition communications since they arrived at station, not because he was ordered to, because he knew better than to trust people who had once locked his species in a cage. "They are already planning for after the war," told quietly. "They were alone in a maintenance corridor, away from listening devices. Some of them want to eliminate us once they are gone." Nodded slowly. He was still recovering from his injuries, moving carefully to avoid tearing his stitches. "What do you recommend?" "I have prepared contingencies, escape routes, stolen ship codes, enough information to expose the Council's discussions if we need leverage." Paused. "I can also arrange for certain accidents if it becomes necessary." No, his voice was firm. "We are not assassins, we are soldiers. The difference may not matter if they turn on us. The difference always matters." Put his hand on shoulder. "Keep monitoring, keep preparing, but we do not strike first. We are better than that." Wanted to argue, but he saw the look in his eyes. It was the same look his grandfather had when talking about the old wars, the knowledge of what violence truly cost. "Yes, sir," said finally. While the coalition debated and the humans prepared, was fighting her own battle. The medical bay was full of wounded, humans and aliens alike. Had been working for 18 hours straight, but she refused to rest. There was always one more patient, one more life she could save. A young coalition medic named Sira worked beside her. Sira was her fur matted with dried blood that was not her own. She had been terrified of humans when they first arrived. Now she followed everywhere, desperate to learn. "Doctor," Sira said hesitantly, "may I ask you something?" "Ask while you work," replied, not looking up from her patient. "Your people. You developed most of your medical knowledge during wars, yes, to save soldiers." "Yes. But you also use it to save everyone, even us, even species that locked you away." Sira's voice was confused. "Why, we are not your people." Stopped, she looked at with eyes that had seen too much death. "When I became a doctor, I made a promise. I promised to save lives, not human lives, not coalition lives, just lives." She returned to her work. "I have broken many promises in my life. That one I will not break." Sira was quiet for a moment. "I think I understand why the coalition was afraid of you. Because we are violent." "No," Sira's voice was soft. "Because you are good. You are violent and good. That is more frightening than any monster." Across the galaxy, they were watching too. That had consumed thousands of species over millions of years. It had faced warriors and cowards, geniuses and fools. It had never failed to destroy them all. But these new creatures, these humans, were different. They reached out through the connection it shared with all. It found memories of the battle on 4. It saw the small, soft creatures fighting with a ferocity that made no sense. They were dying. They should have fled. Instead, they attacked harder. One memory stood out. A human soldier standing on a pile of bodies, her skin burned by acid, her body broken, still fighting. Her eyes showed no fear, Only determination, only rage. They had seen rage before. Prey species often became angry when cornered, but this was different. This was not the rage of the desperate. This was the rage of the righteous. These creatures believed they could win. For the first time in its ancient existence, they felt something cold creep through its consciousness. It took a long moment to identify the feeling. Fear. They made a decision. The humans were too dangerous to ignore. They were too unpredictable to contain. They had to be destroyed completely, down to the last child, down to the last memory. All forces would redirect toward the human, Earth. The message spread through the swarm instantly. Millions of across thousands of light years turned toward a single small planet at the edge of the galaxy. Every queen, every soldier, every ship. That would lead them personally. On station was the first to notice the change. His monitoring systems detected massive fleet movements, all heading in one direction. "Sir," he said, his voice unusually quiet, "we have a problem." Looked at the data and felt his blood turn cold. "They are going to Earth." All of them, every in the galaxy. Hands were shaking. "The has decided to exterminate our species." Arrived in time to hear this, her face went pale. How long? At their current speed, 3 weeks, maybe less. Stood in silence for a long moment. Earth, home, 8 billion people who had never asked to be part of this war. Children who would never understand why monsters were falling from their sky. "We need ships," he said finally. "The coalition will not give them to us," replied. "I already checked. They are pulling their fleets back to protect their core worlds." "Then we take what we need." His voice was hard. "Find every ship in this station that can make the journey. Commandeer them." That is an act of war against the coalition. "The coalition can file a complaint after we save our planet." Turned to face his officers. "We are going home, and we are going to fight." Within hours, the humans had seized every available ship. Coalition officers protested, but they did not try to stop them. Perhaps they understood. Perhaps they were simply afraid. Ambassador came to the hangar as the humans prepared to leave. "I am sorry," he said. "I tried to convince the council to help. They refused." Looked at the crystalline being. "You could have stayed silent. You did not. That means something." "What will you do?" "What we have always done," climbed into his ship. "We will fight. We will probably die, but we will make them remember us." Watched the human ships leave, racing toward a battle that seemed impossible to win. And then, quietly, he began making calls to those in the coalition who still believed in doing what was right. The humans would not fight alone, not if he could help it. The armada blotted out the stars. Millions of ships moved toward Earth in a wave of darkness and hunger. They led them from the largest vessel, a living ship of flesh and metal that was older than most civilizations. Inside its ancient mind, victory was certain. The humans had proven themselves dangerous, but they were few. Their planet had no real defenses. Their species would be consumed like all the others. They had been wrong before. It did not consider the possibility it was wrong now. On Earth, the governments of the world had received warning 3 weeks ago. 21 days to prepare for the end of everything. Most species would have spent that time in panic and despair. Humans were not most species. Every factory on the planet shifted to military production. Cars became armored vehicles. Construction equipment became weapons platforms. Civilian aircraft were fitted with guns and missiles. Every person who could hold a weapon was trained. Grandmothers learned to shoot rifles. Children learned to make bandages. Teachers became squad leaders. Farmers became soldiers. Nobody ran. Nobody hid. They had spent 500 years locked in a cage, watched by a galaxy that thought them too dangerous to be free. Now that galaxy's greatest nightmare was coming to kill them all. Fine, let them come. Arrived in orbit around Earth 2 days before The handful of coalition ships he had commandeered joined Earth's pitiful defense fleet, a few hundred vessels that had been built in secret over the centuries, hidden from the watchers in the sky. "It is not enough," said, looking at the tactical display. "We are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. "When has that ever stopped us?" replied, but he knew was right, numbers did not lie. Then something unexpected happened. Ships began arriving, coalition ships. First a few dozen, then hundreds. They were not military vessels, they were freighters, passenger transports, mining ships, but they were coming. Ambassador's voice came through the communication system. "I told you that you would not fight alone. Many in the coalition refused to help, but many others remembered their honor." The ships were crewed by volunteers from 100 different species, medics, engineers, diplomats who had never held a weapon in their lives but were willing to learn. "Why?" asked, "Your council abandoned us." "The council does not speak for everyone." His crystalline form appeared on the display. He was standing on the bridge of a small transport ship, wearing what looked like borrowed armor. "You taught us something, Commander. You taught us that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite fear." He paused. "We were afraid of you for 500 years. Now we are afraid with you. It is better." They arrived at dawn. They came like a plague, filling the sky with their ships, blocking out the sun. Their weapons began firing before they even reached orbit, turning the upper atmosphere into a storm of fire and death. Earth's fleet met them head-on. The battle was chaos. Ships exploded in brilliant flowers of flame. Debris rained down through the atmosphere like burning rain. The defenders were outmatched, but they did not break. A human pilot named Song flew her fighter into the engine core of a carrier when her weapons failed, destroying the massive ship at the cost of her own life. A coalition freighter captain named Eth rammed his ship into a swarm of boarding pods, saving a damaged hospital ship and its 3,000 patients. A grandmother in Seoul named led her neighbors in defending a shelter with kitchen knives and farming tools when ground troops broke through the defenses. She killed 4 before they brought her down. The shelter held. Coordinated the defense from a command center in the Himalayas, his fingers flying across holographic displays, his mind processing 1,000 inputs at once. He found a weakness in the communication network and flooded it with false signals, turning their perfect coordination into confusion. "Vessel located," he reported. "It is staying back, letting its queens direct the assault." "Can we reach it?" asked. He was on the ground now, leading the defense of the Korean peninsula with whatever forces he could gather. "Maybe, if we can get through about 1,000,000 first." Worked in a hospital that was being bombed every hour. She had not slept in 3 days. Her hands were steady as she performed surgery after surgery, saving lives through sheer will. When the hospital's power failed, she operated by flashlight. When supplies ran out, she improvised. A young human soldier was brought in with wounds that should have killed him instantly. Half his body was burned. His organs were failing. Any reasonable doctor would have let him go. Was not reasonable. 6 hours later, the soldier opened his eyes. "Did we win?" he asked weakly. "Not yet," replied. "Rest. You will fight again tomorrow." The battle raged for 5 days. By the 3rd day, Earth's fleet was almost gone. By the 4th day, they had established beachheads on every continent. By the 5th day, humanity was losing. But they were not beaten. Every time they thought they had won a city, they found humans still fighting in the rubble. Every time they thought they had crushed resistance, new fighters emerged from tunnels and basements. Every time they thought they understood human tactics, the humans did something insane. And slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. They felt its swarm weakening, not just dying, weakening, losing the will to fight. Its soldiers were afraid, its queens were confused. The humans should have surrendered long ago. Why would they not surrender? It reached out to touch the minds of its enemies, trying to understand. What it found terrified it. The humans were not fighting to survive. They were fighting for each other. Every soldier who died was mourned by hundreds. Every life lost made the survivors fight harder. The more the killed, the stronger human resistance became. This was not warfare. This was something else, something they had never encountered in its million-year existence. Love, the humans were fighting for love. Gathered what remained of his forces. They had one chance. The ship had moved closer to direct the final assault on Earth's major cities. If they could reach it, if they could kill it, the swarm would collapse just as it had on 4. "I need volunteers," he said. "The chances of survival are almost zero." Every single soldier stepped forward. Chose 50. Among them were who refused to stay behind and who had calculated the best approach route. They fought their way through the lines in stolen alien ships. They lost half their number before reaching this vessel. They lost half again getting inside. When and finally reached this chamber, they were the only ones left. They waited for them. It was vast, a mountain of flesh and thought that filled the massive chamber. Eyes without number looked down at the 3 small humans. "Why do you not fear death?" it asked, its voice echoing inside their minds. Looked up at the ancient horror. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds. His weapon was nearly empty. He should have been terrified. Instead, he smiled. "Because dying for something matters more than living for nothing," he said. They attacked. Drones found the weak points in this neural structure. His medical knowledge told them exactly where to strike. Led the final charge, planting every explosive they had at the base of the creature's massive brain. They screamed as they set the detonators. Its psychic cry echoed across the galaxy. "You cannot destroy me," it howled. "I am eternal, I am." "You are finished," said and pressed the button. The explosion tore through this consciousness like fire through paper. Across the galaxy, every felt their god die. The swarm collapsed. Warriors who had fought without fear suddenly remembered what it was to be alone. Queens who had commanded millions went silent forever. On Earth, they stopped fighting. They stood frozen, confused, their purpose gone. Human soldiers watched in amazement as the nightmare simply stopped. Then slowly, the survivors began to emerge from their shelters. The sun rose over a broken world. Cities lay in ruins. Millions had died, but Earth was still there. Humanity was still there. And they had won. Ambassador stood before the Coalition Council 1 month later. The war was over. The swarm was scattered and dying. And the question of what to do with humanity could no longer be avoided. "They saved us," said. "Not just the Coalition, the galaxy. They fought when we would not. They died when we ran. And they did it not because they wanted power or revenge. They did it because it was right." "They are still dangerous," someone argued. "Perhaps more dangerous than before." "Yes," agreed. "They are dangerous, but danger is not evil. A storm is dangerous. A star is dangerous. Humanity is dangerous. And humanity is also brave and kind and willing to sacrifice everything for those they love." He turned to face the council fully. "We have a choice. We can try to contain them again, to cage them, to treat them as monsters, or we can welcome them as equals, as partners, as friends." The vote was not unanimous, but it was enough. The barrier around Earth was never rebuilt. Humanity joined the Coalition, not as members but as protectors, partners, friends. Returned to his farm in Korea. He planted rice in soil that had been soaked with blood. He watched the sun rise over mountains that had been battlefields. He remembered the friends he had lost and the world they had saved. Opened a medical school that trained doctors from every species in the galaxy. She taught them human medicine, the medicine of survival, of never giving up, of fighting for every life. Park became the Coalition's first human strategic advisor. He helped redesign their entire military doctrine. He never stopped monitoring communications, though. Some habits could not be broken. Years later, a young coalition historian asked what the most important lesson of the war had been. The old soldier thought for a long moment before answering. "The galaxy's deadliest weapon was never our strength," he said. "It was our stubborn, irrational, beautiful refusal to let each other die alone. They thought they were calling for monsters. What they got was something far more terrifying." He smiled, looking up at stars that had once seemed so far away. They got people who cared. The galaxy had changed forever that day, when 500 humans answered the call. It had learned that there were worse things than monsters in the dark. There were humans who loved each other, and nothing in the universe could stand against that.